This is the story of a friend of mine who thought she had her life perfectly figured out, until one unexpected day changed everything in an instant. What happened next made her completely reevaluate who she was and what truly mattered. Monica had always been the architect of her own life, or so she thought. At 38, she looked back with pride at the fortress of success she had built. Every stone had been carefully chosen and placed. Her job, head of marketing at a leading pharmaceutical corporation, Innovate Pharma, was her bastion, a testament to her intelligence, ambition, and tireless work. She remembered starting as a junior specialist, staying late in the office, studying the market, analyzing competitors, developing strategies that later brought the company millions in profits. Every promotion was earned, every bonus a confirmation of her value. Her office on the 12th floor with a panoramic city view was her throne. Her stylish three-bedroom apartment in an upscale neighborhood, with a designer renovation she had personally overseen, was her cozy haven. Here, every detail, from the wall color to the choice of paintings, reflected her taste. In the evenings, when Andrew, her husband, stayed late, which happened more and more often, she loved to sit in the living room with a glass of wine, enjoying the quiet and the fruits of her labor. Andrew. Their story began like a fairy tale. College sweethearts, shared dreams, laughter, hitchhiking trips across Europe when they were still students. He was a talented programmer, she was an ambitious future marketer. They complemented each other. The wedding was modest but sincere. The first years of marriage were filled with passion and mutual understanding. They planned their future together, a big house outside the city, 2 children, a dog. Monica often pictured this scene, and it warmed her soul. But over the years, something began to change, subtly, like dust settling on a polished surface. Monica's career soared, demanding more and more time and energy. Andrew also achieved success, founding his own small startup. Their schedules rarely coincided. Conversations became shorter, mostly about everyday life or work problems. Romantic dinners were replaced by quick meals in front of laptop screens. Their shared dreams of a house and children were postponed for later, when there would be more time and more money. Later never came. Monica chose to ignore the first warning signs. At work, at Innovate Pharma, whispers began about a possible change in ownership and subsequent restructuring. Her direct boss, with whom she had a good relationship, hinted that she should be prepared for changes. But Monica, relying on her reputation and results, just brushed it off. "This won't affect me, I'm too valuable an employee," she thought confidently. At home, the coldness between her and Andrew grew more palpable. He increasingly stayed overnight at his office, citing urgent projects. When he was home, he withdrew into himself, avoided conversations, hid his eyes. Monica tried to break through this wall of silence. "Andrew, what's happening? We've grown distant. Maybe we should take a vacation, go somewhere just the two of us," she asked one evening. He just replied wearily, "Monica, not now. So much work." Her attempts to restore intimacy, a romantic dinner, theater tickets, crashed against his indifference. She felt lonely in her own home, next to the man who had once been her closest person. Fear squeezed her heart, but she pushed it away, blaming everything on fatigue and stress. And then, on one gloomy October day, Monica's carefully constructed world began to crumble with catastrophic speed. It all started with a short email from the secretary of the new CEO of Innovate Pharma, appointed after the change in ownership. "Dear Ms. Monica, please come to the CEO's office tomorrow at 11 a.m. No explanation. Just a dry, official tone. She felt an unpleasant chill in her stomach, but her usual self-confidence prevailed. They probably want to discuss the new strategy, my role in it, she thought. The next day, exactly at 11 a.m., Monica, dressed in her best business suit, entered the office that had recently belonged to her former, friendly boss. The new CEO, a man in his 50s with cold eyes and a stern mouth, didn't offer her a seat. A woman she didn't know, presumably from HR, sat next to him. Monica Viktorovna, he began without any preamble, as you know, the company is undergoing a reorganization process. We have conducted a thorough analysis of the effectiveness of all departments. Unfortunately, we are forced to inform you that your position as head of marketing is being eliminated as of today. The words hit Monica like a sledgehammer. She felt the blood drain from her face. Eliminated? But, my department always showed the best results. I developed the strategy for launching the drug Vitacell, which became a sales leader. Her voice trembled. We appreciate your contribution, the CEO interrupted, his tone unchanged, but the company's new structure does not include such a position. Here are the documents. You will be paid compensation according to the law. The woman from HR silently handed her a folder. Monica stood frozen. This couldn't be true. It was some terrible mistake. She wanted to scream, argue, prove her point, but the words stuck in her throat. A wave of injustice, helplessness, and humiliation washed over her. She silently took the folder and left the office without looking back. The corridors she had walked every day for 10 years suddenly felt foreign. The glances of colleagues, she imagined, were filled with either curiosity or pity. She quickly packed her belongings into a box, a few photos, her favorite mug, business diaries. Each item brought back a wave of memories. Here was a photo from a corporate party where she was awarded as the best employee of the year. Here was a souvenir from an international conference where she successfully represented the company. None of it mattered now. Leaving the Innovate Pharma building with the box in her hands, Monica felt exposed and lost. Work wasn't just a job. It was her anchor, her identity. Who was she now without it? That evening, she returned home earlier than usual. The apartment greeted her with silence. Andrew wasn't there yet. She mechanically put the box in a corner, unable even to unpack it. The feeling of emptiness was overwhelming. She poured herself a large glass of wine, then another. She wanted to forget, to disappear. Andrew came home late, when Monica was already sitting on the sofa, staring into space. He immediately noticed her state. What happened? He asked, and for the first time in a long time, there was a hint of concern in his voice. I was fired, she replied quietly. He sat beside her, silent for a while. Then he carefully took her hand. I'm sorry, Monica. That's awful. His sympathy slightly melted the ice in her soul. Perhaps, she thought, this misfortune would bring them closer. Perhaps now he would understand how much she needed his support. She began to tell him how it had happened, about her feelings, about her fear of the future. Andrew listened attentively, without interrupting. When she finished, he was silent for a long time, looking away. Then he sighed deeply and said the words that finally destroyed her world. Monica, we need to talk. I wanted to tell you earlier, but I didn't know how. I can't do this anymore. I'm leaving you. Monica felt the ground disappear from under her feet again. This was too much. 2 such blows in one day. What? What do you mean, leaving? Her voice was barely audible. I fell in love with someone else, Andrew said softly but firmly, avoiding her gaze. It's been going on for a while. I didn't want to hurt you, but I can't live a lie. I've already packed. He pointed to a suitcase standing by the door that Monica hadn't even noticed. Someone else. She repeated, as if in a fog. After 15 years. You're just leaving. The pain was unbearable, sharp, it pierced every cell of her body. Betrayal. The person she trusted the most, whom she loved, had simply erased her from his life. I'm very sorry, Monica, he said, getting up. Then he picked up the suitcase and left, closing the door behind him. Monica was left alone in the empty apartment. Among the ruins of her former life. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but she didn't notice them. The world she had so carefully built had collapsed in a matter of hours. She felt crushed, betrayed, and utterly, limitlessly alone. The following weeks and months blurred into one continuous, endless nightmare. Monica existed, she didn't live. She woke up in the morning in an empty bed, and the first thought was the realization of the new reality: no job, no Andrew. This thought crashed over her every morning with renewed force, causing panic attacks and tears. The apartment, once her pride and joy, now seemed huge, cold, and hostile. Every corner reminded her of the past. Here was his favorite armchair where he read in the evenings. Here were their shared photos on the walls, witnesses to a happiness that no longer existed. She tore down all the photos, hid them in the closet, but the memories haunted her. The practical aspects of the divorce added to the pain. Dividing property, meeting with lawyers. Andrew behaved correctly but distantly. He agreed to leave her the apartment, taking the car and some of the savings. Every such meeting, every discussion of details, was like a knife to the heart. She saw a stranger before her, who had once been her universe. Financial problems grew. The compensation from Innovate Pharma quickly dwindled. The search for a new job seemed an impossible task. She sent out resumes, but her age, former high position, and the long gap in her career, as it seemed to her, worked against her. Several interviews led to nothing. Each rejection hit her self-esteem, which was already at rock bottom. She began to doubt her professional skills, her value as a specialist. Friends. At first, they called, expressed sympathy, offered help. "Hang in there, Monica, we're with you, if you need anything, call." But Monica avoided them. She was ashamed of her situation. She, always strong and successful, was now the embodiment of failure. She didn't want to see pity in their eyes. Gradually, the calls became less frequent, the invitations stopped. Some friends, especially those in happy marriages, simply didn't know what to say to her, how to behave. And Monica was left practically alone with her grief. Her days were all the same. She woke up late, lay in bed for a long time, unable to get up. Then she aimlessly wandered around the apartment, sometimes sitting in front of the TV for hours without understanding what she was watching. She didn't feel like eating. She lost weight, became frail. She stopped taking care of her appearance. The mirror reflected a stranger with dull hair, dark circles under her eyes, and an empty, faded gaze. Nights were the hardest. Insomnia became her constant companion. As soon as she closed her eyes, images of the past appeared, happy moments with Andrew, successes at work. And then, his words about another woman, the cold look of the new boss. Pain, resentment, anger, self-pity, these feelings tore her apart from within. She cried until there were no more tears, and then just lay, staring at the ceiling, feeling limitless emptiness. Sometimes she thought about seeing a therapist, but dismissed the idea. "Nobody can help me," she told herself. "I have to deal with this myself." But she had no strength. One day, while going through old papers, she came across her college diaries. Reading them, she painfully realized what a joyful girl, full of dreams and hopes, she had once been. Where had it all gone? Had that Monica died? Despair reached its peak one winter evening. Snow was falling outside, and the apartment was cold and unwelcoming. Monica sat on the floor, hugging her knees. One thought spun in her head: I can't go on like this. I don't want to live like this. It was rock bottom. The deepest point of her fall. And precisely at this moment, when it seemed that darkness had swallowed her completely, something subtly changed. Perhaps it was an instinct for self-preservation, or perhaps fatigue from suffering. But somewhere deep inside, a tiny, barely perceptible spark flickered, the desire to change something. This spark was so weak that Monica didn't even notice it at first. But it didn't go out. The next morning, waking up, for the first time in a long time, she felt not only the usual burden of despair but also a faint desire to do something. Not knowing exactly what, she simply got out of bed, went to the window, and looked at the snow-covered city. That day, she forced herself to go outside. Just to walk around, breathe fresh air. The cold wind stung her face, but it was better than the stuffy atmosphere of the apartment. Wandering the streets, she accidentally found herself near a bookstore. Something drew her inside. She walked among the shelves for a long time, looking at books. And suddenly, her gaze stopped at a small book with a bright cover, The Art of Small Steps. Not knowing why, she bought it. At home, making herself some tea, for the first time in many days she felt like drinking something other than water or wine, Monica began to read. The book was written in simple language, without complex psychological terms. Its main idea was that any path, even the most difficult one, begins with a small step. And that it's important not to try to change everything at once, but to focus on small, achievable goals. This idea resonated with her state. She didn't have the strength for great achievements, but perhaps she was capable of small steps. The next day, she took the first such step. She cleaned the apartment. It was difficult, but when she saw the result, a clean, tidy home, she felt a tiny bit of satisfaction. The next step, she cooked herself a proper lunch. Then, she called her mother, with whom she had barely spoken lately, ashamed of her problems. The conversation was not easy, but her mother's support, though awkwardly expressed, warmed her a little. One day, scrolling through news on social media, Monica came across a post by an old acquaintance who was talking about her experience volunteering at a local animal shelter, Paws and Claws. The acquaintance wrote about how interacting with dogs and cats helped her cope with stress, brought her joy and a sense of purpose. Monica had always loved animals. As a child, she had a dog, a loyal friend named Rex. Memories of him brought a warm wave to her soul. The thought of the shelter stayed with her for several days. She hesitated. Would she have the strength? Would it be another disappointment? But the spark of curiosity and the desire to do something unrelated to her own problems won. She found the shelter's address and one Saturday morning, gathering all her courage, she drove there. The shelter turned out to be quite large, a bit noisy, but clean. She was met by a short woman in her 60s who introduced herself as Sarah, the volunteer coordinator. Monica, a little awkwardly, explained that she wanted to help. Sarah smiled warmly and gave her a small tour. Dozens of pairs of eyes looked at her from the enclosures, sad, hopeful, curious. The barking of dogs, the meowing of cats, all created a special atmosphere. Sarah suggested that Monica start by helping with walking the dogs. She was given a leash and introduced to her first charge, a large but very gentle dog named Jack, whom his former owners had simply left tied up in the woods. When Monica took Jack out to the designated area, he was cautious at first, but then, feeling her calm demeanor, he started running happily, playing with a ball, and then came up and nudged her palm with his wet nose. At that moment, Monica felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time, sincere, selfless joy. That day, she spent several hours at the shelter. She helped clean kennels, feed the animals, talk to other volunteers. The work was physically demanding, but she didn't feel tired. On the contrary, when she returned home, she felt pleasantly exhausted and, most importantly, a tiny but real feeling that she had done something useful. She realized that caring for these defenseless creatures distracted her from her own worries and filled her days with new meaning. Monica began to go to the shelter regularly, at first every weekend, and then, when she had free time, on weekdays too. Each trip was like a breath of fresh air for her. She became attached to many animals, each with its own, often tragic, story. There was an old German shepherd named Alma, whom her owners had given to the shelter because she was no longer needed. There was a small, timid cat named Murky, who had suffered from human cruelty. Monica could sit by his cage for hours, quietly talking to him until he began to trust her. It was at the shelter that she met Ms. Eleanor, an older volunteer, a woman in her 60s, with kind, wise eyes and inexhaustible energy. Ms. Eleanor was the heart and soul of the shelter. She knew the history of every animal, knew how to find an approach to the most difficult personalities. She immediately noticed the sadness in Monica's eyes and, without asking anything, simply surrounded her with her unobtrusive care. One day, as they were cleaning kennels together, Ms. Eleanor casually said, "You know, Monica, animals are the best doctors for emotional wounds. They don't ask, they don't judge, they just love you for who you are. And they teach us to live in the here and now, to find joy in simple things." Then she added, looking Monica directly in the eyes, "I see you're going through a tough time. But remember, child, life is like a river. Sometimes it's calm and smooth, and sometimes it's turbulent and dangerous, with rapids and waterfalls. But even after the worst storm, the water always finds its course again. The main thing is not to stop rowing, not to give up." These simple words deeply resonated with Monica. She felt understood, that she wasn't alone. Conversations with Ms. Eleanor, her life wisdom and optimism, became a powerful support for Monica. She began to open up little by little, talking about her experiences. And Ms. Eleanor always found the right words to encourage, advise, or simply listen. Inspired by these changes, Monica decided to take a few more, small steps. She remembered how she used to love running in the mornings. Now, forcing herself, she began to resume these runs. At first, it was hard, but with each day, she felt her body getting stronger and her thoughts clearer. While running, she felt like she was shedding the burden of the past, charging herself with energy for the whole day. Then she decided to fulfill a long-held dream, to learn something new. Graphic design had always appealed to her, but before, she never had time for it. Now she did. She found online courses and immersed herself in learning. Studying new programs, creating her first layouts, developing logos, all of it captivated her, gave her a sense of creative realization. It turned out she had a talent for it, and the instructors praised her work. Monica started keeping a diary. At first, it was difficult, she didn't know what to write about. But gradually, she learned to express her thoughts, feelings, and analyze her actions on paper. The diary became a kind of therapist for her, helping her understand herself, see her small victories. Of course, the path to recovery was not smooth. Sometimes waves of despair and longing would wash over her. It was especially difficult on holidays or when she accidentally met mutual acquaintances of hers and Andrew's. Memories of the past returned, and the pain became sharp again. But now Monica no longer allowed these feelings to completely consume her. She learned to accept them, live through them, but not dwell on them. She called Ms. Eleanor, went for a run, sat down at the computer and worked on a new design project, or went to the shelter, where grateful eyes and warm hugs, or licks, always awaited her. Gradually, Monica began to change not only internally but also externally. She lost weight, but it was no longer a sickly thinness. A sparkle reappeared in her eyes, a smile on her face. She started taking care of herself, updated her wardrobe. And one day, looking at her reflection in the mirror, she saw not a faded shadow, but an attractive, strong woman who had gone through difficult trials but had not broken. Almost a year had passed since the day Monica's life fell apart. During this time, she had traveled a huge distance, from complete despair to rebirth. She hadn't yet found a permanent job, scraping by with small freelance graphic design projects, but financial difficulties no longer scared her as they used to. She had learned to live more simply, to appreciate what she had. The main thing was that she had found herself, her true values, and new sources of joy. One day, while browsing job vacancies online, she did this calmly now, without panic. Monica came across an advertisement that immediately caught her attention. A small non-profit organization, Heart to Heart, which helped orphan children and children from low-income families, was looking for a communications and fundraising specialist. The job description perfectly matched her marketing experience, and her new graphic design skills could be an added advantage. But most importantly, she was drawn to the organization's mission. After her experience volunteering at the animal shelter, she understood how important and meaningful it was to help those in need. Monica hesitated for a long time whether to send her resume. The fear of failure, the memories of past rejections still lingered. But then she remembered Ms. Eleanor's words about needing to keep rowing and decided to try. She carefully prepared her resume, wrote a cover letter in which she sincerely spoke about her motivation. A few days later, she received a call inviting her for an interview. The director of the organization turned out to be a young, energetic woman named Mary. The interview took place in a relaxed, friendly atmosphere. Monica talked about her experience at Innovate Pharma, about the successful marketing campaigns she had developed. And then she enthusiastically shared her ideas on how to improve Heart-to-Heart's communication strategy, how to attract more donors. She spoke sincerely, with a sparkle in her eyes, and Mary listened with genuine interest. When the interview ended, Monica didn't know what to expect. But 2 days later, Mary called her and said, "Monica, we would be happy to have you on our team. Your ideas and your enthusiasm are exactly what we need." Monica couldn't believe her luck. She got the job. It wasn't just a job, it was a chance to start a new life, to do something meaningful, that benefits others, and at the same time allows her to realize her professional potential. The salary was significantly lower than at Innovate Pharma, but for Monica, that was no longer the primary concern. Work at Heart-to-Heart turned out to be interesting and fulfilling. Monica developed informational materials, managed the organization's social media pages, organized charity events, and sought sponsors. She used all her previous experience, but now her work was filled with deeper meaning. When she succeeded in raising funds for a sick child's treatment or finding a family for an orphan, she felt incredible satisfaction and pride. She quickly found common ground with her colleagues, a small but very friendly team of like-minded people. They often stayed late at work, discussing new projects, sharing ideas. Monica felt part of something big and important. In parallel, she continued to volunteer at the animal shelter, although she now had less free time. Ms. Eleanor rejoiced in her successes as if they were her own. "See, Monica," she would say, "I told you everything would be okay. The main thing is not to give up and to believe in yourself." Monica had changed. She was no longer the self-confident but somewhat superficial career woman she had been before. And not the heartbroken woman who had almost drowned in despair. This was a new Monica, strong, wise, compassionate, who had learned to appreciate true human relationships, find joy in simple things, and find happiness in helping others. She understood that the losses she had suffered were not a punishment but a difficult but necessary lesson. They forced her to rethink her life, to find her true path. Several more years passed. Monica was now in her early 40s. She still worked at Heart-to-Heart, having become an indispensable member of the team. The organization had significantly expanded its activities, helping hundreds of children. Monica was proud of her involvement in this cause. She lived in her small, but cozy apartment, which she now truly loved. Everything here was arranged just as she liked, each item had its own story. One day, she bravely decided to adopt a dog from the shelter, a small, shaggy terrier mix named Pixie, who had been abandoned as a puppy. Pixie became her loyal friend and companion, filling her home with joyful barking and unconditional love. Monica's personal life also gradually improved. She wasn't actively seeking a new relationship, but she didn't close herself off from the world either. At one of the charity events organized by Heart-to-Heart, she met a man named Mark. He was a doctor, a volunteer who helped the organization. Their shared interests and values brought them together. The relationship developed slowly, cautiously, but sincerely. Mark was a kind, reliable man who valued Monica for her strength, intelligence, and good heart. He didn't try to change her, accepting her for who she was, with all her past. One spring evening, Monica sat on the balcony of her apartment, wrapped in a blanket. Pixie slept nearby, curled up in a ball. A cup of aromatic herbal tea was on the table. She looked at the evening city, at the millions of lights, and thought about her journey. Memories of the past no longer caused sharp pain. They were part of her story, a part of herself. She hadn't forgotten anything, neither the happy moments nor the bitter disappointments. But now she looked at it all differently. She understood that the trials she had faced had made her stronger, wiser, taught her to appreciate what was real. If not for losing her job, she might never have dared to change her field, never found work that brought her so much satisfaction. If not for the breakup with Andrew, she might never have understood what true, harmonious relationships based on trust and mutual respect should be like. She remembered Andrew. They had accidentally crossed paths in the city a few times. He looked older, tired. People said his business was going through tough times, and he had also broken up with the other woman. Monica felt neither anger nor resentment towards him. Only a slight sadness for what could have been, and gratitude that their paths had diverged, allowing her to find herself. Monica understood that happiness is not external circumstances, not a prestigious job or having a husband. Happiness is an internal state, harmony with oneself and the world. It is the ability to find joy in every day, to appreciate what you have, to love and be loved, to do good and see the results of your work. Her path was difficult, thorny, but it led her to her true self. She didn't just get up after falling, she soared, spreading wings she hadn't even known existed before. She learned to see beauty in simple things, find support in the people around her, and give that support to others. Ahead, she knew, much more awaited her, both joys and, perhaps, new challenges. But now she wasn't afraid of them. She knew she had enough strength, wisdom, and love to cope with any difficulties. Because after the darkest night, dawn always comes. And her dawn was incredibly beautiful, filled with hope, love, and boundless possibilities. Monica smiled. She was happy. Truly happy.